classes on history, so psychology, sociology, anthropology, linguistics. I'm also a student of um, just all sorts of archaeological data and just history in general and things like that, as well as modern medical science. I'm a medical science nerd, and thought crossed my mind. So I'm somewhere on the autistic spectrum, and I'm just wondering, because of my own personal history, is my parents born and raised in Los Angeles, and then they decided to move to someplace else. And I'm thinking the reason why they moved to someplace else is everyone in their family kind of picked on them. They were a little bit slower. They're a little bit, and thinking about it, like, yeah, because my parents were on the autistic spectrum. Um, and so it being genetic, um, and my family heritage, both sides being like Russian immigrants and Norwegian, Scandinavian, Swedish immigrants. Um, it's it just got me to thinking because so the United States, uh, part maybe part of what's going on with people who came to the United States back in the day, hundreds of years ago, or in the 1800s, when it's this idea like, okay, well, here's this new place, there's opportunity, there's free land, there's just go for it, go take it. um, and you read about how do people talk, how do people dress, how do people behave, and because this is what Samuel Clemens was capturing with some of his material, um, and what you can see in the show Deadwood, um, because it thinking about if people were on the autistic spectrum and they have a notion, they have an idea of how to behave, or they see what is the way to behave, and you're riding around on horseback for days on end, isolated in some cases. Um, you're out in the middle of whatever part of the Wild West, uh, and yeah, that explains why outlandish costumes that people are wearing, but for both just to keep warm and as well as like to display like, oh, this is who I am, this is what I sell, or this is what sort of my position and status in the community. The visual cues. So the because it's I keep thinking about how the United States, a nation of immigrants, and why? What does that mean? Well, who are immigrants? Who are the immigrants now? People who are displaced, people who are at threat, people who are refugees, people who have been, um, like the farm they're growing up on, and is just in a territory of violent people who will do harm. And the risk, and so like what course of action can you take? Like, all right, well, get out of here, flee. Where can you go? And so the establishment of a human corridor to the United States, and that's something you hear about throughout history of these human corridors of, well, if things are bad here, move to this other location. In the case of the United States, I think that explains why in the USA population you have these higher incidences of people on the autistic spectrum. I was having a conversation with someone who said, "Oh, these people of Middle Eastern," and the way this guy was like, "Well, I don't care about this or that. I just want to know how much money am I saving." And um, it's and it's like, that's an interesting way to go about it, because that's an autistic way to look at things, and um, because so to me it's this notion of like, so we got these foreigners, they come here and they act a certain way, um, and they maintain whatever way they dress and speak, or like really they dress, eat, behave, um, and which are autistic traits. So that's why, like, I'm just kind of, it's just mulling over my mind. Like, all right, so thinking about autistic traits, thinking about uh, the history of immigration into the United States of America, and it's like, yeah, I'm seeing this sort of like it seems to be ticking, the right boxes in my mind. Um, and as a result, what do we see going on in the United States? Because if you think about, like, well, what's the relationship between the United States and other countries? How do other countries view the United States, um, and their interaction with us prior to World War II? Is something that I kind of wonder and think about. And because what I see is, um, it seemed like everyone was thinking of the United States as the place to take. Um, okay, so at first, British colonies, then the War of Independence. The common thinking is the United States is a bunch of drunks who are ready to sue, and they're violent. Um, the As the Industrial Revolution starts taking off, um, it's the United States is participating in the Industrial Revolution. It's like, yes, we had our own advances, uh, and I am of the personal opinion that because the United States had a patent office, this is part of why, like, there's this just acceleration in terms of technology, and why the United States, like, just was this better um, government in comparison to others at the time. Um, so other country, other countries are kind of thinking like, all right, the United States is financially it's stable. It's holding together. Uh, it's participating in the world environment, the global economy, and we see this because during the 1800s, nobility will intermarry with American businesses, and they will, in some cases, nobility and royalty will even retire and live in the United States. Um, the Follow that up with, okay, so getting back to, yeah, the United States, all these immigrants. Who are all these immigrants? A lot of them are probably on the autistic spectrum, and because why if you're in Europe, um, and you get picked on by others, and you want something better for yourself, you want to claim something better for yourself, so yeah. The So the other aspect of that, um, but yeah, so following World War II, uh, the what the world saw, uh, it's like there's a couple things that was happening. World War II is where like World War One was definitely this end of old world monarchies and the rise of new world democracies and socialist states. World War II was it was a continuation of this Franco-Prussian conflict, um, but it resolved with the United States being in this position of supremacy, because on top of that, the United States had atomic weapons, which so if you're a group and like, all right, let's go take care of this thing, and then the dumbest one of your group, the dumbest strong one in your group is like, by the way, I got this bat with bullet on the end of it. If I hit someone just right with this bat, it while everyone else has sticks and stones. Like, okay, you have a technological advancement over the rest of us. Let's talk. Let's start negotiating with you about our relationship there, big dumb strong guy. Um, and I think with the proposition of the United States of the United Nations, with NATO, um, that's why this sort of like, yeah, let's go with it. Let's participate. Let's make sure we're having control and influence on what's going on in the United States. Um, and the United States in the case of the United States, it's we needed these organizations because trade partners. That's economics. The way you're able to make capitalism work, and then as well as help these recovering economies around the world. Um, but so why am I talking about all this? Bunch of autistics leaving their countries, coming to the United States, um, becoming part of this melting pot, this um, amalgamation of different peoples. And the other thing to realize and consider is we, for the Caucasians, um, and possibly even, well, I don't know enough about the Chinese to understand like what was going on with that influx of population. Um, but I know it was very fluid since people were able to move back and forth, and these are certain legal cases, which was how they're able to establish American citizenship. Um, but the it's because this is caveat in terms of African slaves brought in. So who is this population of African slaves? Um, it's war captives, more often than not. Well, who are war captives? Like it's just, whoever villagers. The slowest, um, the young, uh, yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the genetics and cultural, to make a judgment call at this time. Um, I mean, because like sickle cell anemia and uh, obesity, as well as like just muscle mass and like, because like these are all it's delicate subject matter, and to get into, and but it's like, oh, so why? But look at pro athletes, it's like, well, it's certain things. But it's mental. That's the other thing to keep in mind is that, like, oh, what about how do you build your body? It's like, well, who are the best athletes out of the world? It's like it's these people who mentally are stronger than other athletes. They are the ones who push themselves further and harder. Um, the so okay, why am I talking all this stuff about autistics, immigrants coming to America, uh, and different populations? And because I keep am trying to understand uh, why so many people are going for uh, Donald Trump, and Republicans, and libertarians, uh, and then also sort of fascists, extremists, racists, openly or subtly organizations. And because it's this sort of revelation in my mind that for the fascist organizations, the racist organizations, purity organizations, um, it's this sort of autistic, like an order. The world has an order. I accept that the world has an order. I understand the world because of this order. I fit into the world because of this order. And I fit, so because I fit into this order, and I understand where all of you fit into this order, that gives me a calm, that gives me a place, that gives me a connection. Um, the and so where the Donald Trump politics of grievance, of you have been a victim, people have taken advantage of you, people have abused you, people have been mean to you. That's where it's. I think like, yeah, it makes sense that you can, with low information, convince people that, all right, Trump is your guy. He speaks to you. He represents you. Um, yeah, it's yeah, because but then again, I don't know. That's just Ethereum, kind of that. Like that's why I'm just making this video. All these different thoughts are coming to my mind. And I'm just like, I'm just noticing this, and that seem to connect. And so I'm hoping I'm able to present enough information, enough details here and there, to just sort of, like the autism through line, I think, is what I'm noticing. And because I'm a history nerd, so I'm looking at the trends and the populations and how people go about things, and so I'm always looking at things through history and like, what is the historical thing about for Trump's election? Why would Trump win? There's all these different theories presented just don't seem to hold up when argued over. And what I mean by that is some people are like, oh well, because there's this transgender was a big issue, but 25 openly transgender people won election across the United States, and in some states, like there was rights for transgender or people were politicians were pro transgender, and they won election. Um, the abortion being an issue, some states legalized, formalized into their constitutions, like abortion was being legal. Governors elected for pro-abortion. Um, the and for Democrats, like like several Democratic governors were elected, Democratic politicians. What I think, when taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, is um, gerrymandering, uh, the Sinclair Network, and Fox News. So the Sinclair Network is owned by a certain individual. They put out the half-hour news in the local districts. Majority of people, that's the only news they pay attention to, and there are certain short segments added to the end of the programs that are read or said to the audience, and they're of a very conservative, point of view, and in some cases, they're they essentially normalized what was going on with Donald Trump, the President Donald Trump, during his first presidency, in between, and probably now into the second presidency. Um, the because when you look at the trials where Donald Trump was president, and all the video and photographs and imagery, you see Donald Trump angry, annoyed, bored, sleeping. You never see him nervous. You never see him worried. Um, you never see him in jail. The Russian cyber trolls were big online, fled the zone. It overwhelmed people, so they just turned off online. They just stopped paying attention online. 1 out of 10 people follow the news, so um, and like so, maybe more because of that. But um, everybody gets their information from one of those 10 people. So that 10 people, they're on a spectrum, and yeah, the Russian cyber trolls, Sinclair Network, Fox News. Yeah. So Russian cyber trolls. Yeah, those like sort of things. But like that's the things I was noticing for why people would elect, because the followers, the people in the Republican Party who are still with Trump, um, and still rationalizing and able to excuse and able to just understand and embrace everything they're seeing. Like, despite the arguments that this is bad, like that seems to be sort of autistic traits. Um, there was this comment about how Germany, World War II, well, who were the Nazis? The Nazis were the assholes. And the which is kind of like, well, what do you mean by that? Because when you put into context that the Nazi regime for Germany, how it took over was they just stopped applying the law to certain people who were either the ones you wanted to oppress and take from, or they ignored the people on the other end of the spectrum who were the wealthy, the powerful, the elite, the ones who like, oh, the law doesn't apply to me, I can get away with it. Um, what so it's society kept going on. society kept functioning as normal. Um, and it's just they were able to motivate and lead the country to the state of war. Um, and then, so they made the Nazis go away. So who did they make go away? All the assholes. So I guess a lot of autistic people were the Nazis there. Um, I don't know, because if you empower autistics, they become assholes, maybe. So, yeah, just some ideas. What do you guys think?